Hey, welcome to Cooking with Kat. Today we're making authentic Lebanese tabbouleh. We're going to use one bunch of parsley, a bunch of scallions, 2 to 3 large tomatoes, a lemon, a little bit of mint, a cup of bulgur wheat that's been soaked, some olive oil, and some salt to taste. So what you want to do with your parsley is you want to pick off the leaves before you chop it. So I've already done that. So you just gently want to pick off the leaves off the ends of the stem, and you can make a pile out of it. Once you've done that to your whole head of parsley, you can either chop it by hand or you can use a food processor. I'm going to use a food processor because it's a lot easier, but if you don't have one, you're going to take the parsley, you're going to roll it, and you're going to chop it by hand into tiny little pieces. Like that. If you have a food processor, you're going to put your parsley in the food processor in batches. Pulse it so it chops but it doesn't get mushy. When your parsley's chopped, you want it to look at about that consistency. Once you're done with your parsley, it's time to move on to your tomatoes. You want to take your tomatoes and put them into like eighths. And then the most important part is you want to take the seeds out of your tomatoes. If you don't take the seeds out, they're going to get mushy when you process them or when you chop them. Once the seeds are all out of your tomatoes, you can either chop them by hand if you don't have a food processor, or you can put them in the food processor. If you use the food processor, you want to be very careful that they don't get too mushy. That's about the size you want of your tomatoes. The food processor makes the tomato chopping a lot easier, but you have to be very careful because if you overprocess, they'll get mushy. Make sure and pulse them gently just until they're chopped up. And you're going to add your tomatoes to your parsley mixture. Next, we're going to chop up our scallions. Again, same thing. You can either chop by hand or you can use the food processor. The food processor makes chopping the scallions super easy. Chop them in about 1-inch pieces, toss them in, and pulse. Okay, the next step's a little tricky. You want to soak about a cup of bulgur wheat. You're going to soak the bulgur wheat to make it softer, and then you're going to drain the water out of the bulgur wheat. In order to add your bulgur to your tabbouleh, what you want to do is squeeze the extra water out with your hands. And you want to add just enough to make it to the right consistency, which is a little tricky. You have to kind of eyeball it. If you want to make this gluten-free, you can use quinoa instead of bulgur. But make sure you know how to cook quinoa so it doesn't get bitter. If you're not sure how, watch my video on how to cook quinoa. That's the right consistency for tabbouleh. You don't want to add more wheat than that. So I ended up adding about a half cup. Now you're going to add in your mint. We're just going to use a tiny little bit of mint. Mint is one of the easiest herbs to grow. So I recommend growing it in your garden. You want about a tablespoon of fresh mint. This is really going to make your difference in how good your tabbouleh tastes. Finally, we're going to make our dressing. We're going to take the juice of a fresh lemon and about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Make sure you're using quality olive oil. It's really going to make a difference in how good it tastes. Finally, you're going to add in about a half teaspoon of salt into your dressing. You're going to pour your dressing on. Once you add your dressing to your tabbouleh, you're going to stir it thoroughly. And the key to making it taste really delicious is store it in the fridge for about 2 to 3 hours before you serve it, and stir it every hour or so to get those flavors really mixed together. One of the big differences in how your tabbouleh is going to taste is how fresh your tomatoes are. So the fresher the tomatoes, the better the tabbouleh, and that's true with all the ingredients. Enjoy.